Now, I wonder, who's next? Let's join Lloyd straight away at house number 2 as we go through the keyhole.
This house is a very good example of solid and spacious between the wars domestic architecture, and as soon as you come in here, you know that this is the house of someone who likes traveling. There's a fabulous photograph here, which I must say looks as if it comes from the 50s, of a family group about to get on an airplane, and look what it's branded: British Overseas Airways Corporation, the ancestor of BA. Now, certainly whoever lives here likes stuff, whether it's ecclesiastical candelabra or a rather handsome old glow lamp. Here in the sitting room, there are more signs of that love of traveling. Quite a few guidebooks, where to stay hotels, a vintage Egon Rone guide from 1983, and a book on Beverly Hills. So whoever lives here is someone who's been to Tinseltown and is probably quite interested in show business. But certainly this person is what you would call a committed Londoner. There's a big glossy photo essay on the glories of London, and there's the Ivy cookbook. The Ivy is, of course, London's most famous and fashionable restaurant, and judging from that and the Food Lover's Guide to Britain, chances are that dining out is one of this person's favorite pastimes. But music looms large in this room, especially what you could call the glory days of British rock and roll. Look at this bit of sheet music, I Got My Mojo Working by Muddy Waters, but as recorded by Cliff Bennett and the Rebel Rousers. And then there's obviously an interest in the groups that came out of Merseyside. We've got the Beatles' Unseen Archives. But judging from this Gibson guitar, I would guess that whoever lives here began their career as a bit of a folkie. The gear in this room shows us that making music is still very much part of the everyday life of this household. Now, whoever lives here quite obviously likes guitars. There are a lot of the familiar American names like Gibson and Fender, but most of these guitars are extraordinarily evocative of the British music scene in the 50s and 60s, when most British musicians were playing German guitars with names like Hofner and Framus. And there's another great bit of early British rock memorabilia, a poster reminding us what it was like when the Beatles played in Stroud. Now, if you look in the books in the bookcase here, you can see that this person loves biographies. So we're dealing with someone who's very interested in individual motivation, the ups and downs of people's career. And there is a definite interest in the show business biographies with, for example, books by or about Marlene Dietrich, Rex Harrison, and Gene Kelly. Well, this is a very well-organized home office, and you can tell that whoever lives here has a real flair for organization. So we're dealing with a very, very, very meticulous person. But even in this room, we are surrounded by objects that tell us that whoever lives here is completely mad about music. There is, for example, an extraordinary collection of framed backstage passes, the ones that say either all access or VIP. So this person spends a lot of time hanging around at concerts. And of course, there's a lot more 60s memorabilia. What are they listening to? Well, at the moment, it seems to be an even split between the Everly Brothers and the great American singer-songwriter Jackie DeShannon. Now, let's look at the evidence. On the road, I Got My Mojo Working, a bass man. Who lives in a house like this? David, it's over to you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Lloyd. And now for our home and studio audience, here's whose house it is. The 60s, eh, James?
I think it's a male we're looking for.
Yep.
Who travels obviously likes his restaurant, and I'm sure he can get a table because I can't. Maybe obviously not sort of modern music, looking at the guitar selection that he's got. So maybe writes something for either for himself or maybe theatre. No, plays music.
Yes.
And I wouldn't say modern. Not really sort of not pop. It would be sort of folk, maybe classic jazz. No, obviously not.
Well, no. More modern than that.
More modern than that. Right.
Well, 60s we were looking at there.
60s, right. I don't know
60s music played today, but not particularly folk. I wouldn't have said that was misleading. Joan, this is very much your area.
Well, music, well, the 60s, certainly. I thought I knew what was going on then, but clearly not.
If you can remember, they say you weren't really there.
So I have fleeting memories. He plays the guitar. He plays the guitar a lot.
Yes.
But he perhaps doesn't play the guitar as much as he used to, perhaps. No?
Well, he's still
going strong. And
they're perhaps not as big as they were, but anyway.
Right. A group in the 60s. Well, it's clearly not the Beatles. Is it going to be a Bee Gee? Is it going to be who? Is it going to be? Oh my goodness. Oh, Alistair, have a go.
You're getting warmer. Warm.
The collection of guitars. Again, at one stage, he was a very, very big star. I'm not saying he's not still a very, but Gibsons don't come cheap, and that was a wonderful collection of expensive guitars. But is the instrument that he specialised in the bass? And there were there was Cliff Bennett and the Rebel Rousers twice.
Yes.
So. Was he the bass guitarist in the Rebel Rousers?
No, that's very observant of you, though, to spot that. And
because they were the support act under the Beatles.
Before he became part of the he played with Cliff Bennett and the Rebel Rousers. So
he left Cliff Bennett and the Rebel Rousers and went on to form his own band.
Join a band.
To join a band as the bass guitarist.
That's right.
Was it a Liverpudlian band?
And it obviously was. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And you know it can't be Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas because they were displayed so obviously there. So,
did he play with Jerry Marsden?
And the Pacemakers?
Jerry and the Pacemakers?
No. The thing is, I don't think there's anything more I can say except to actually give it to you on a plate. But the group in question...
Wasn't the Searchers?
Yes! Will you come and join us, Frank Allen of the Searchers?
Thank God for you.
Didn't he do well there, Frank?
He did very well. I was sweating there for a minute there, but
and you had an expertise about the bass guitar that I...
Well, I did, because Frank will know this immediately. My son Alex is a very, very keen electric bass guitarist, and I was just telling Joan a moment ago, he did particularly well in something a little while ago, and I said, that's worthy of a prize of some sort, what would you like? And he didn't say a guitar, he didn't say a bass guitar, he said a Fender Jazz bass.
Oh, excellent.
Which
Good.
is a bit of a Rolls Royce.
It
so
certainly is.
I was looking at your collection, I thought, the boy's done well.
Yeah. Good. And you've been a member of this group for
37 years now.
37 years.
Yeah, a long time. And 4 years before that with Cliff Bennett and the Rebel Rousers.
Yeah. Were you always going to do music, do you think?
For a while I was, yeah. I didn't believe I could make a living out of it. That's the thing. You know, when you start off, you're like lucky amateurs, and you kind of make your way in it and think, well, this is going to last about 2 or 3 years now after face life again and get a proper job. But thank goodness it wasn't like that.
And so the Searchers, we mentioned Cliff Bennett and the Rebel Rousers, but the Searchers started in 60, and you joined them in 64, was it?
The Searchers in 64, yeah. I'd met them in 62 at the Star Club in Hamburg, which is where everybody went. We all travelled there, and The Star Club opened in '62. I met up. I didn't even know there was a Liverpool scene till I got out to Hamburg, and then there were all these bands that had their own kind of little hierarchy back in Liverpool, and including the Beatles, of course, and that was the first time I heard about them. I used to hang around with the Searchers because they were very nice young lads. They were very clean-living young lads, and it was like a den of iniquity out there, so they were very much my kind of people. And I used to get on very well with them, and then, of course, later on, when they needed someone new, then they thought of me.
And then, immediately, the hits went on. They'd just done Needles and Pins, hadn't they?
Yeah, '64 was, the year I joined, was probably the glory year for the Searchers. Needles and Pins was a hit in, I think, February '64. Strangely enough, a song that they got from the group I was with, because we'd been playing it on stage as Cliff Bennett and the Rebel Rousers. When it came time for them to look for a new song to record, they remembered that, kind of revamped it, and had the huge hit that they came up with.
And what was the biggest hit you had after you joined them?
When You Walk in the Room, the first one that I was on them with, which is still my favourite. Not because I was on it, because I loved all the ones before that as well. It's just it's a Jackie DeShannon song, and it's just a classic pop song, brilliant song.
But you're still, as I was saying earlier, you're still touring? And...
Oh, monstrously, yeah. This year has been absolutely phenomenal. We haven't stopped at all. It just looks like going on forever, I hope.
Whereabouts have you been? You've been to Australia? And...
Yeah, this year so far we went to Singapore, onto Australia, onto New Zealand, back over to the Middle East. We spent about 6 weeks doing that trip, got back for a day, then started into a 3-month tour of theatres right across the UK, and it's just like virtually no days off, which is good.
You mentioned a lot going on in Hamburg in 1962.
Yeah.
Is the scene today purer than then?
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't think so. No, I wouldn't think so. There's a lot more money in it these days, I have to say. The kids have got their deals organised these days, so they're dealing with a lot heavier things than we had to deal with at those times. It was very, there was a lot of drinking more than anything else going on at the times when we were having our first tastes of success. So I don't know whether it's purer now, but there's certainly, if you make it these days, you're going to become a lot richer than we were. And we did all right out of it.
Yeah. And also if you become a hit footballer as well.
Oh, yeah.
But here we have Through the Keyhole. This is our way of saying, Frank, thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Good luck for another 37 years of touring.
I should prize that. Thank you, David.
Frank Allen, ladies and gentlemen. Our big thanks to Frank Allen and, of course, to Alistair McAlpine. And, of course, to our panelists, to Alistair Stewart, to Joan Bakewell, and to James Martin. Until the next time, goodbye for now.